It's so common that a client will come to me and they will be experiencing symptoms of anxiety and they have no idea. They can't tell what's happening to them, why they're experiencing certain symptoms, and they just think everything is out of their control. And I love being able to talk to them and sit there and say, actually, this is anxiety, and I have some things I think are really going to help impact the way you feel on a daily basis. My name is Tiffany. I'm a perinatal and Christian psychotherapist, and on this YouTube channel, I upload videos every single week, twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, where I use scripture and science, and I help encourage moms so that they can be the happiest moms they can possibly be. Let's just deep dive right into what anxiety is. I didn't break out the whiteboard, but I was so tempted to bring my whiteboard out for this video. If you've ever sat with me in a session before, you know that I have a big whiteboard and I really enjoy using it because I think I'm a visual person and I know it can help a lot with the cycle of anxiety and kind of deep diving into specifics to you when you're dealing with anxiety. And so it's important that if you are struggling with anxiety, you do find a therapist to work with on a personal level, right? This video does not substitute individual counseling. It's just a little bit of knowledge on anxiety to help you have a little tools in your back pocket for when you need them. One video couldn't possibly solve all of the anxiety woes that you might have. And it's a really individualistic thing. So it's great to sit with somebody and work through it. First off, let's just get right to the point of what is anxiety and what does that word mean when someone uses the word anxiety. Symptoms of anxiety vary. So if you're experiencing anxiety, it could look like tightness in your chest, sweating, heart racing, racing thoughts where you can't really concentrate, or you feel like everything around you is going on and you're in your own world because you're so lost in your thought. You're so distracted by what's making you anxious. Other symptoms can be upset stomach, just feeling like your stomach's turning, you're nauseous, you're going to the bathroom a lot. A lot of moms that I treat will come to me and one of their only symptoms that they have is that they're irritable. And that is so shocking to them when they sit with me and they say, I'm always crabby. And I'm like, are you crabby or are you anxious? And when we deep dive into it, a lot of times we've discovered it's anxiety. And I think that anxiety is a normal bodily response and mental response to stressors. It's normal because if you think about it, if you're being chased by a bear, you should feel anxious by that. It is our body telling us that something about our situation isn't safe. And so it is normal. What's not normal is how we don't know how to cope. And that's where it becomes a disorder, is we experience anxiety, we're paralyzed by it, we don't know what to do with it. How do we cope with it and how do we stop it before it gets to this mountain that no one can cope with? And one time I had a friend of mine ask me about a situation in which their child was experiencing a ton of anxiety and they walked me through one setting where they were like, what do you think of this? And I just said to them, that sounds like a situation that nobody could handle because they went from the anxiety level being a 1 or a 2 and then it grew and by the time we realized that child was anxious, they were at a 9 or 10. Well, if I'm at a 9 or 10, that's not something that anybody is going to be able to de-escalate me from. I'm going to need a snack, a drink of water, and I'm going to need to go to bed for the rest of the day. And I'll wake up tomorrow. That would be the most likely response for a day that is as awful as that child is experiencing, if it is a 9 or a 10 for them. And so understanding your symptoms is imperative on an individual note because I might not experience upset stomach, for example, when I'm anxious, but I will experience ropes in my chest. To share a personal thing about me is that if I'm anxious, I often am quieter and I'm going to have ropes in my chest. It's going to feel like I can't really breathe because I'm so kind of either nerved up or stressed out that I'm like, you can't really tell here on the video, but I'm kind of like curving my shoulders inward and my my chest feels super tight. That is how I'm going to feel when I'm anxious. And so it's really important when we're talking about symptoms to understand that getting to know you on a personal note, and you should know you. That is what I love to offer in counseling is just the freedom to sit and say, let's explore you. Let's figure out what do you like when you're anxious and what are you like when you are your favorite version of yourself, when you're your happiest and you're your calmest and you're the most resilient to everything. I think we all know that feeling when we've been that way. And if you haven't recently enough where you're like, I can't even picture that, that is even more of a sign that you should probably look out look up a counselor for yourself, because you should not know what it's like to experience joy in that level where you're so calm and resilient and you just feel like the lightest version of yourself mentally, because anxiety is really heavy and it bogs us down. So to start, I've mentioned a few symptoms. I've talked about kind of like what my symptom might be like. So you could pause this video right now. You could take a couple minutes to think through it for yourself. What does anxiety look like to you, for you? I would say write it down. It's really helpful if you can write down what symptoms you're experiencing and how severe they are as far as what is the worst symptom that you have. For me, it's going to be tightness in my chest. I'll start to get irritable, like I'll be snippy, bitey with people around me, like a little bit more like, stop that, or my tone will be harsher, I don't know, or things like that. I'll say phrases like that where I'll be just harsher with my tone, and that's usually because I'm being overstimulated. So that's me getting into the root of it. So if we were going to talk about the cycle of anxiety, I think a great place to start before I deep dive too much into mine. Also, side note, one of my most favorite things about somebody who knows a lot about a certain area is when they can kind of nerd out on a topic. Anxiety is that topic for me. I could nerd out on it. And I will say honestly, it's not because I am plagued with anxiety a lot. I'm really not. It's because I have noticed how much the enemy gets into women's heads and makes them so miserable through anxiety. And then because we have a lack of coping skills and a lack of understanding of what anxiety is, he just gets to play us like a little bit of a puppet. And it's really frustrating to me. But when I get to sit with a mom or a woman and just help her figure it out and kind of get those tools and learn more about herself, all of a sudden the enemy's grip on her is loosened. And I love that. And so it has made me really, really passionate about anxiety and talking about it. So if I get lost in a thought on here and this video ends up really long, I'm really sorry, but it's just one of those topics I love and I could talk about it forever. Okay, so we've talked about some symptoms of anxiety. Let's talk about the cycle of anxiety. And so people will often think that anxiety is kind of like a trap. They'll fall into this hole. Imagine like a bear trap in the ground. They'll imagine that anxiety is that way. You're going about your day and you fall into this bear trap and you're stuck there. I want to give you a little different mental picture of anxiety because I think it'll really help you understand kind of how anxiety fits into our life in a more realistic way. So you're not trapped in some hole, okay? Imagine that every day you are a car and you're driving down the road. Anxiety is a roundabout. Now, some of us will hit those roundabouts. They'll hit a moment of anxiety and they'll be able to use the roundabout the correct way to keep going straight. Some of us get stuck in that roundabout and we go around the roundabout a ton of times. And some of us get in that roundabout and we go out the wrong direction because we coped really poorly with that anxiety. And it ended up taking our life in an unhealthy direction. Okay, not the way we were meant to be traveling. I hope that's making sense so far. I have an example that I use with most clients and whenever I'm talking about anxiety because I think it's something that's kind of relatable to people. Imagine that you got a bill in the mail. Okay, let's just say it's from a hospital, you get your bill, you're not really sure what to expect from it. You see that bill and you get a little nervous. Ooh, what if I screwed up my insurance? What if they charged me way more than I was expecting? What if my HSA is drained? What if I can't afford this bill? Okay, we have all those negative thoughts right away when we see the bill. We see it, we know it's a hospital bill, and our brain just spirals. Your body's gonna feel really nervous because your body does not know the difference between imagine you're on a trail and you see a squirrel or a bear. If you tell yourself they're both terrifying, your body's going to have a nervous reaction to both of them. So what's happening is you're getting that bill and your body doesn't know that I can't actually be harmed by that bill because that's just not the biological responses. Our body isn't able to decipher between the two. So if you see that medical bill and you have these really negative thoughts of this is doom and gloom, this could be awful, this is just it for me, I'm going to lose the house because of this bill, your body's going to go, I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. How can I cope with this? Now, if you haven't trained yourself to have healthy coping skills in those moments, you are probably going to do something like take that bill and put it on that magic spot in your counter where you put bills and things that you're going to deal with later. I think a lot of people have that little junk spot where I'll just stack those bills there. Now, the problem is for a moment you've coped. because we do trick ourselves into thinking that I dealt with that bill because I put it in that magic spot of I'm going to get to it tomorrow. But then tomorrow comes and you see that bill there and you go, not right now. I got to have my breakfast. I haven't even had coffee. I can't deal with that bill right now. Or I need to get to work and I'll deal with it when I get home from work. And then you keep putting it off. Because see here in the cycle of anxiety, what's happening, the very first thing is this stressor. There has to be a stressor. So your stressor is the bill. You see the bill and you have a negative thought about it, an unhealthy, distorted, we would call it a cognitive distortion, so a distorted thought. You're going to have this distorted thought about that bill that is doom and gloom. And that causes your heart to race, that causes your chest to get tight, your stomach turns. You're just filled with immense doom. And your body does not like that. So it's going to have a physical reaction. So you've had a bodily reaction. Now you're going to have a physical reaction, which is going to be, I'm going to take that bill and I'm going to do something with it. Now, to cope healthily, we would open it up. But because we've imagined so much doom and gloom on what's on the inside of that bill, our physical reaction is unhealthy and it's going to be, I'm going to set it on the counter and I'll deal with it later. But here's the problem. Like I've mentioned, you're going to continually see the bill and your body's going to go, how did we cope with that last time? That was really quick and easy. You're going to take the path of least resistance every time. It's not you. It's just human nature. I think it's just sin within us that we often play the short game and not the long game. Because if humans wanted to naturally always play the long game, we would never quit working out. We would never sleep in. We would never procrastinate around our home or sit on the couch for too long because we would know that, yes, this is good short term, right? It's more comfortable to sleep in. It's more comfortable to skip the gym and go home early after work. We would always pick the short term because that's what's more comfortable right now. But if we knew long term and if we weren't lazy, I say that lightly, don't take it too harshly, but truly, if we weren't kind of lazy and if we didn't have this desire to just be idle, the sin in us, we would be able to do the long term all the time. We would always play the long game. It would be a no-brainer. Oh, I can't be distracted by what's going to benefit me right now. I have to do what's going to benefit me long term. But we're not. And anxiety kind of does the same thing. It plays on that little bit of our human nature to be like, what's easy right now? Pick what's good right now. Is dealing with the bill right now good for the long game or the short game? It's good for the long game. Short game though, rough, right? Because you have to just bite the bullet, face the bear and open it up. That's hard. And you've trained yourself over years and years and years to put that bill in a separate spot and say, that's a problem for tomorrow's Tiffany. She has to figure that out. Well, the problem is that the more you do that, the longer you put off paying that bill and you get closer to having maybe a fee added on, it being hard on your credit score, you having other bills now. So all it does is really hurt you. And you know who loves that? The enemy. He does. He loves it. He wants you to feel stressed to the max all the time. He wants you to have unhealthy coping skills. He wants you to deal with things. He's maybe even in your ear saying, don't open that bill right now. Just shove that to the side, right? He would love it if you would do that and have all this anxiety that would grow in you, because then when you're out to eat with your spouse and you're sitting with them, instead you're kind of thinking about these things that you've been procrastinating or putting off and things that are not and these things that are stressors that you're not dealing with. He knows, well, I can distract you when you're on a date with your spouse. He knows, I can distract you when your kids are like, hey, play with me. And you're like, I really can't go play with you because I have all these things I'm putting off that are stressing me out. And if I play with you, no, I'll just say, no, I can't play with you because I should be getting all these things done. But realistically, I'm probably not going to get them done. And so he just knows that he's going to create turmoil. Those are just little examples of ways that he can kind of disrupt your life. Your bills might not disrupt your life when you're playing with your kids, but it is an example of how he can just weasel his way in. And you don't really see him. And oftentimes, I think that's why in scripture it talks about encouraging good counsel on things, is because we can be so set in our old habits that we don't see it as the enemy. In fact, a lot of times, I think the enemy works really hard to make people feel so terrible that they're procrastinators, terrible that they have anxiety, terrible that they feel paralyzed to not make decisions and that they can't move forward. I think there's so many levels in which that the enemy gets to tear you down. And I think anxiety is a big term for just lots of ways that the enemy gets to manipulate us and steal our joy, which he can't steal you from Christ. but he can steal your joy. And we have joy on earth because Christ saved us. And so that is what he's after, and that's what he does with anxiety. Okay, I don't want this first video on anxiety to be a million years long. Something I am planning to do, if you're not following me on Instagram, I don't really push my Instagram much. I have very few followers over there, and I really love all the women that are over there. But I will be doing a follow-up anxiety video where I'm going to take actual questions from people who follow me on Instagram. So if you have Instagram, my handle is @therapy.tiff. On Instagram, you can go over there, follow me, and then when I do a question box, or you can send me a direct message there and let me know, hey, it would be great if you could answer this question. Maybe it's something you notice with your girlfriends that they all have anxiety about, or something you personally suffer with. It might benefit somebody that you don't even know who's going to stumble upon my next video. So go over there and send me a message. Let me know something that would be good for me to answer in regards to anxiety. I would even love to do a cycle of anxiety on a specific topic. So if there's one like gym intimidation, which is a common one I'll treat with moms, or birth anxiety, things like that, let me know, because I can do a cycle of anxiety graph with you in that question and answer video. Okay, we've talked about anxiety from a symptoms standpoint. What are you experiencing? Figuring out what is anxiety to you. If you're not sure if your symptoms are anxiety or not, good reason to go meet with a therapist, okay? You don't have to figure it out on your own. There are people like me who've spent years in school studying this stuff. We read it in our free time. We want to sit with you. So go find a therapist. Then we've talked about the cycle of anxiety, and that it's kind of like you're on a road and you're getting stuck in this roundabout. So when you notice the negative thought, you have to be like, oh, that's stressful, but I can handle it. And having a quick little coping skill so that you can not get stuck in the roundabout and you can keep going straight on your road. Because here's the truth. In life, there are always going to be stressors. There are going to be bills. There are going to be hard conversations. There are going to be things that are going to be anxiety inducing. It's just our life on earth. And the more you can accept that being the reality and deciding that I get to choose. To a certain degree, I know that there are extreme forms of anxiety. I'm talking a little bit more generalized anxiety here. Generalized anxiety is like the person who's considered a worrywart. I'm not necessarily talking about people who have true phobias, intense panic disorders, even PTSD and symptoms like that, where those are super overwhelming and trauma-based. Those are things that this little quick video could never necessarily help with. But I mean the anxiety that trips us up on a regular basis is understanding that you do get to decide how long you stay in that roundabout, and it's all through coping skills. Coping skills are hard. I hear you. They're hard. It is much harder to stay in that roundabout. The person who is genuinely struggling with anxiety, that is so debilitating and hard. I refuse to not tell you that a coping skill is easier. It is easier to learn your body, learn your beliefs that you have about the world and yourself, and if you're safe and if you're lovable, and then being able to apply specific coping skills to the way you view the world and yourself. That is so much easier, and that is so much better for the long game than living in a place where you feel like I can't cope on a daily basis, or I'm not good enough to figure it out. And so this is just how it has to be for me. That is absolutely the enemy keeping you stuck. Because the Lord is never going to send you thoughts of anxiety. He's going to keep you safe. He's going to give you discernment. But he's not going to make you feel like you're not capable of dealing with a medical bill. You're not capable of going to the gym. You're not capable of applying for that job. You're not capable of putting yourself out there and doing that really hard thing that you've always wanted to do. The Lord is never going to make you feel that way. That is the enemy. And it's much easier to spot it as the enemy when you know God's character better. So as I wrap up this video, my challenge for you, as you know, I love to give challenges instead of homework, because as moms, who has time for homework? My challenge for you is get to know God's character more through reading scripture. Because the more you know God's character, the more you can spot when it's the enemy, and you can know the Lord would never do this to me. This has the enemy written all over it. This stinks. Something smells. You know. Because the truth is, and I hate to end it on such like a spooky note, but the enemy is after moms. He is. I know it deep in my soul that he is after the moms. Because moms have the ability to create so much peace and harmony in the home and in the family, we play such a crucial role. It's the reason why the Bible talks so highly of women. It's because God just adores us so much, and he knows the strength that we bring. There's a reason why he calls us a helper in the Bible, and what a compliment that word is. The enemy knows, how is he going to get to our children? Through us. How is he going to get to our husbands? So a lot of times through us. And it doesn't mean that you should feel shame and guilt over your anxiety because it's hurting your children's lives. But I do want you to take accountability for it, that you are modeling behavior, and you could be modeling anxious behavior for your kids too. And so if you won't get help for your anxiety because you don't think you're entitled to it, do it for your kids. Do it so that you can model recovery, so that you can model resilience, so that then someday when they come to you and say, I'm really anxious dealing with this topic, you can say, I have been there. And that was the enemy in my life. And here's how I worked through it. Here's how I dealt with it. Part 2, coming on anxiety soon, will be all about coping skills, how to help you deal with your anxiety in those moments more. Today we touched a little bit about how I want you to learn the character of God so that you can spot the enemy more, so that you know when something is discernment or anxiety. Thank you so much for being here. It would be so nice if you would leave a comment down below. That is great for the YouTube algorithm, and I would love for this video to get into the hands of a mom who's been dealing with anxiety and doesn't realize that freedom is within her reach. And if you comment and like this video, it might tell YouTube that people like it and to push it out more and get it into the hands of more moms. And I just think that would be so amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I pray you have the best week. I'll see you next Monday for another video.